Hi everyone, this is Jim. This video is going to be uploaded on Christmas Eve, so I want to take this opportunity to wish you all a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas to those of you who celebrate Christmas. The game itself was a bit like an early Christmas present to me, so let's go over it and see what happened. So my opponent started off with knight f3, knight f6, so I'm just kind of waiting to see what he wants to play. Often they will go into an English here, or they will play g3 here for a normal reti. This got classified as a reti, by the way, in the by Lichess. So I guess that's for lack of any other name, it got called a reti opening. Although what it is that White is playing a King's Indian defense with colors reversed. So and I went along with it by playing d5 here. You can see that's the most common move here, and then he went g3. So this is a very typical King's Indian defense setup, and I played c5, and you can see that well, you know, there's a few games that have been played like this in the opening book, so it's not unheard of, but it's pretty uncommon. And well, if you look at it, the chess engine thinks that black pretty much equalizes here, but it's easy to get into trouble. Let's see, I continued with g6 here. The main way of continuing is probably knight c6 and e5, and the chess engine even gives a slight edge to black, but you're playing a very sharp system, and I don't like that system even when I'm white because it's just too easy to get into trouble. So I generally play the fianchetto system, although I play a system with the knight here on e7, I guess it would be, instead of f6. Of course, I'm playing it from the white side. Just a different kind of fianchetto. This is actually the more, let's see, he went knight bd2, and I went bishop g7. This is actually the more common fianchetto setup against the King's Indian defense, more common than what I play. So I don't have any particular knowledge about this position, but I'm just playing from general principles here. Let's see, he castled. I castled, and you see actually after castling we're up to a position where this has been played a reasonable number of times, and normally White continues with e4 here, and that would sort of complete the King's Indian setup, and I would probably continue with e6 at some point, although maybe I would bring the bishop out first, I'm not sure. But he didn't play that way, he went with c4. So we're just out of the opening book here. And I went with e6, just shoring up the center. I don't want to, I mean, that's the advantage of not having played e5, is that you don't, your center can be supported by the pawns, and you can hold on to these good pawns on d5 and c5 and control some squares in the center. So it makes it a little harder for White to get some kind of attack going against you when you control the center like that. And let's see, he just went a3, kind of a slow move, but maybe he's going to expand over here at the queen side at some point. I went knight c6. He went rook b1. So knight c6 stops him from playing b5, because I would just take once with the pawn and then with the knight. Although that's not entirely clear. You know, he would get an open b file for that, and this pawn maybe could cause some trouble. But anyway, he wanted to push the b pawn without having to lose a pawn, and I wanted to stop it because I like this knight here. It's controlling some central squares, and I don't want it to be disrupted. Then he just went b3 at this point, shoring up his center, and I went with b6. Actually, you know, all these moves I think have been pretty logical. The chess engine thinks it's about even or maybe slight edge for black, but it likes black quite a bit after the move d4. If I had played d4 right here, and I eventually end up playing this later in the game. But I just wasn't sure I wanted to commit to it at this point. It is a very committal move. So b6 is just a way of holding on to things and also opening up a square for my bishop. I want to put a bishop here to oppose his bishop on that light squared diagonal. So this is in the range of about even once again. He goes e3. I continue with my plan, bishop b7. He goes queen c2. Go rook c8, putting the rook opposite the queen. He goes bishop b2. So we both got a very similar kinds of setups. I lift my queen up to protect my bishop. I was realizing if things open up here in the wrong order, this bishop might be caught loose. And then he played h3 here. Yeah, I went queen d7. He played h3. And at this point, I just figured I had to continue on with d4. There just didn't seem to be any way to make progress in this position, and it seems to be a reasonable move here. He took, and I took back. And actually, the chess engine thinks his best move here would be to take with the bishop. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and then drop this knight into e5, kicking my queen. And that would give him a chance to trade off the bishops and drag my queen over to this b7 square. So it's kind of similar to the game, except that he's given up his dark squared bishop, which means there's actually less pressure on this pawn. But on the other hand, he's kind of dragged my queen away from the center. The queen would rather be over here on the d file supporting this pawn. And he's got a pretty good knight there that he can support with knight to f6, which will support the knight and attack the e-pawn. Anyway, still in the range of about even, but maybe slightly better than what he played. He took with the knight, and it's important that I throw in this intermediate move. Well, I don't know how important it is. I mean, all these positions are within the range of about even, but this one is a slight edge to black, whereas if I had just taken back and let him take the bishop, that's a slight edge to white. So that's all we're dealing with, is slight edges at this point. So he had to take my bishop before I grabbed his rook, so that intermediate move was pretty forcing, and then that gave me time to take his knight. So he dropped his queen down to d1. I played rook f to d8. Yeah, there was a line here that gives a slightly better advantage to black according to the chess engine. Queen c6 check. Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about that move at this point. I was thinking about how to get my knight over to this square, and I ended up with a very roundabout way of doing it. But the chess engine would do it like this. It would support the pawn with this move e5. And I don't have to worry about the knight coming here and blocking a defender of that pawn. You know, if I had instead of e5, if I had played like rook to d8, for example, either rook to d8 to defend the pawn, and then it comes under fire. Well, it's already under fire from the bishop, and it's going to come under fire from the knight. And if I move this knight away, it'll block the rook, although it'll open up the bishop. But if it's attacked twice, you know, so there's a little bit of difficulty maneuvering. So the chess engine solution is to push on with e5, and now my pieces are free to maneuver at the cost of blocking in this bishop, at least momentarily. But I think, like in the game, maybe there will be an opportunity later for me to push on and free up that bishop. And also, as long as his bishop is also looking at that same pawn chain, they're kind of neither bishop is particularly worse than the other, I guess, in a case like that. Anyway, that's just the engine's point of view. I went rook f d8, but I think that's a reasonable way to play. He went knight f3, so now he's really ganging up on this pawn, so I have to get the knight out of the way and hold on to it. But this knight e8 was actually one of the top engine choices, and still keeping an edge to black, so it seems like I'm doing okay here. He went queen e2, went knight c7, because I had hit on this idea. Now I could go knight a6 to c5, and that looked like a good square to the knight. For the knight. Looked like a good square to me for the knight. Let's see, he went rook f e1. Lining up on the e file, I went knight a6. He went bishop c1, so he's trying to activate that bishop. He's given up trying to put a lot of pressure on this pawn. Although maybe not entirely. I was maybe a little too relaxed about that. We'll come into a moment. Anyway, I threw in this knight c5 move I'd been planning, and he went bishop f4. And yeah, this is the moment where maybe I got a little bit too relaxed, or maybe I ran out of ideas. But h6 is a slight mistake, and we'll get to it, why that's a mistake in a minute. The chess engine would push on with b5. I think this is a pretty interesting idea. Trying to soften up the queen side. If he takes, that queen will take back, and then the queen and the knight will be coordinating. I imagine the queen there will be coordinating with the knight, hitting these pawns. It might not be too safe to take this one because of the pin, but maybe I could take this one. So it would at least force him to defend a little bit. And it looks like a good plan. Of course, he doesn't have to take, and I think he probably wouldn't. He would look for another move here, but seems like a good active plan for black. So h6 is a bit passive. I mean, it keeps pieces out of the g5 square. And let's see, he didn't react immediately. He played h4 and went king h7. And now he plays this move. This bishop e5 move is a good move, and it could have been played right after h6. So after h6 or after king h7, it was a good move in both cases. So both those moves were slightly suspect because I didn't do anything to prevent the bishop from coming here. And well, this is just good. I mean, I planned to kick the bishop back with f6, and I did. But he really could just grab this pawn. I was thinking in the game that I would probably end up getting this pawn back, but it turns out with good play I don't. So I can kick the bishop, and he has to give up the bishop for the knight. I can take back with the pawn, use those pawns to keep these pawns restrained. Let's see, he can play rook e to d1, just defending here. And, you know, I'm just not going to be able to get enough force to bear on that. I was thinking he might have to, you know, retreat his knight to defend it or something. But if he can defend with a rook and a queen like that, then that's fine for white. Now, so white's a pawn up at this point. He does have a couple of weaknesses that I can pile up on. And my weaknesses over here are not so easy for him to get to, and my king is very safe. So in fact, it's still just a slight edge to white, even though he's a pawn up. And it's still a playable position for black. And you know, maybe I have ideas of undermining like this. So so it's not a lost position by any means, but you know, I'm going from a position where I had an advantage to a position where I'm a little bit worse, if he played that correctly. But for some reason he retreated his bishop this way. Maybe he just wanted to hold on to that bishop, didn't want to have to trade it for the knight, or maybe just didn't see that whole line. So anyway, I kicked the bishop again with e5. And yeah, so once again I'm back to having a slight edge for black. And let's see, he went rook e8. Oh, I went rook e8. Yeah, actually after bishop f4, my advantage increases quite a bit, but I missed a chance to really get a big edge here. So I stay with a slight edge. After bishop d2, though, I was kind of, you know, it had to retreat somewhere. I had to move queen to f5. And I'm piling up on this e-pawn here, which is kind of the linchpin of his position, and it's holding back these pawns. And, you know, there's no good way for him to defend that pawn. You can see that he hasn't got a piece available that can go to a square that can defend it. And so I'm actually just winning that. And it doesn't do any good to harass my queen, because I can just take the pawn with my queen, because his piece defending it is a queen. So if I had spotted that queen f5 move, that would have turned the tide of the game right there. So that is actually winning at this point. I guess it started when he retreated his bishop, and I played here. I could have had a win at this point, but I didn't spot this idea. I played rook to e8 instead. I'm just planning to kind of push these pawns through. Yeah, I mean, it's a logical plan. It's just that I had better. Let's see, drop back to queen f1. I still had this queen f5 idea here. I could have still played it, but instead I played on with e4, going on with my original plan. So now we're back to the range where there's some maybe slight edge to black, but it's pretty close to even. So he takes, I take. He goes queen d3, and I go f5, supporting my knight. And that was my plan. I wanted to advance these pawns and support this pawn securely with my bishop, and I was going to deal with this blockade later. And here he makes the blunder that loses the game. He could have played on with a move like b4, and like I said, slight edge to black, but an interesting and complicated game. So could have gone either way at this point. But instead he made this move, rook to e2, which is a pretty terrible blunder, because after knight to c5, there's nowhere the queen can go that defends the rook. So there's nothing better than what he played. The chess engine gives us its first choice rook to e7 instead of rook takes e8, but I'm just going to take the rook. So he's going to lose a rook in any case. Maybe in that line he gets a pawn back, but he's going to be a whole rook down. So anyway, he tried trading out, but I can grab the queen here, and these extra trades don't really help much. I'm still just up a queen for a rook, and you know, he's going to try and trap my my knight here, or maybe get some tempo on it with the quick move of the bishop. But I move my queen to the c6 file. Now, actually, this Queen C6 move, this was suggested by the chess engine quite a bit earlier, but it's pretty strong here. And he tried this thing with the bishop unleashing a discovered attack on my knight, but after knight to e5, he resigned. There's no way to defend the knight. The rook can't come up here and defend it because I can just chop it off. My bishop is defended, so there's no big threat over here, and so he's just losing more material. In fact, if you let the chess engine look at this position for a while, it gives a forced mate in about 11 moves. I don't know if I would have found that, but certainly winning by preponderance of material. So anyway, that was a fun game and a nice early Christmas present for me. So as I said, I hope you guys have a happy holiday season, and I will see you again soon.